Hi, in this video I want to briefly explain what the blockchain is and give a brief overview going through its definition, its origins, how it works and some frequently asked questions about the technology. So starting with the definition, a blockchain can be said to be a decentralized distributed ledger which keeps a permanent record of all transactions in a chronological and unchangeable way. So breaking that down by decentralized, I think the best way to think about it is if you try to access a website such as YouTube or Wikipedia, the information you're looking at there on the screen is stored on a server somewhere. So if that server went down or was hacked, you would either not be able to connect to the website, or the information you would see on that website would be false because whoever hacked the server would just put anything that they want on there. So the websites are said to be centralized, and all their information is vulnerable because it's stored on servers and can be hacked. However, with the blockchain, a ledger is shared amongst a network of computers. So whoever joins the network automatically downloads the entire ledger. So therefore, if one computer then goes offline or is taken over or is hacked, the network can carry on and that PC doesn't bring down the whole network. The ledger is therefore said to be decentralized, so it's not dependent on one central authority or server or anything like that. It's also permanent, chronological, which means it's basically in time, order, and also unchangeable. I think we will see why this is true when we look at how the blockchain works in a few minutes' time. So where did this technology come from? So in 2008, we had the financial crisis. People lost trust in the banks and the financial sector. Banks were giving people with zero credit history huge loans that they couldn't repay. They were selling these loans onto institutions, basically passing on the risk, and it all went down inevitably, and essentially the banks indebted the world and the government reacted by printing money to prevent the whole system going under. So this devalued fiat currency such as dollars, pounds, yen, etc., and was the inspiration for this group here, or this person called Satoshi Nakamoto, who basically had this idea to come up with an alternative type of currency and not rely on banks or governments for us to share our wealth between each other peer to peer. And this currency is called Bitcoin, and it was based on something called the blockchain, so Bitcoin was the first application of this blockchain technology. And people seem to think that blockchain and Bitcoin is the same thing, but the way that I think about it is blockchain is like an operating system like Windows or iOS, and Bitcoin is just one application. So it's like going to the App Store and downloading something that runs on your phone. So I think it's important to kind of understand that difference. So let's kind of look at how it works then. So I think the best way to explain the blockchain is using a tool created by someone called Brownworth. So you can access that through a website. I'll put the link in the description. And he's also got a YouTube video which really helped me understand kind of how this works. So let's look at it then here. So we've got this block that's in red, and we have some data in this block. So we have a payment here where A wants to send $1 to B. So this blockchain is using something called a SHA-256 hashing function. So what this does is it takes this data here, this input, this sequence of words or values, and it transforms that data into a hash, which is a long series of numbers and letters, and it generates that output based on the data. So if I was to add a full stop or add something else in the data field, this hash would completely change. So this hash is unique to the data that I input here. So in this sequence, a hash is only said to be valid if the first 4 characters of the hash is 4 zeros. So for example, in this first block, it's red because the first characters here are 935E and not 0000. So in order to change the hash and find a valid hash, we have to try and guess what the key is. And the key is also technically called a nonce. So the key or nonce will basically be a number that combines with the data to provide a hash beginning with 4 zeros. So how do we find that number? So the way that we do it is we use a computer to go through every number from 0 to infinity until we find a number that gives a valid output beginning with the 4 zeros. And this process is called mining, and it takes some time. So in this example then, so we've pressed mine, and after some time the nonce has been populated, or the key here, and it's given us a value of 11719, and that 11719 combines with the data here, and it gives us a hash which starts with 4 zeros. So this hash is said to be valid, and this block is said to be confirmed. So what happens now is the miner who has run this application on their computer and found this key 11719, he tells the whole network. He says, look guys, I found the key here. And what the network does is says, okay, cool, we'll want to check that, and they will look at this number 11719. They will put that number back into this field, and they will see if the hash becomes valid, as it starts with 4 zeros. And if the miner is correct, they will confirm that transaction, and that is said to be a sort of consensus confirmation. So when you send a transaction with Bitcoin, for example, you'll send it, the miner will find what the nonce is, and then you'll have a number of confirmations after that. So that's basically the other miners in the network saying, yeah, that input, that nonce, that key is correct, and that miner who found that key will get a reward in the form of a cryptocurrency. So for example, in Bitcoin, the reward is 12.5 Bitcoins for the miner who gets this, who finds this key, who finds this nonce. So now how is a blockchain kind of formed? So a second block uses the hash from a previous block. So you can see we've got the hash with the 4 zeros here, and that hash that we've got from the first block, which we found, that will appear in the second block. So the second block is linking to the first block cryptographically. So it has to use the previous hash for it to be identified as block number 2. And what this ensures is it also ensures that the transactions are in time order, because we're using the previous block's hash. So this hash has to come after the previous block. So block 2 has to come after block 1, etc. Block 3 after block 2. And what happens in this block? So again, the process just repeats itself. So the hash on block 2 here is invalid. It starts with 3 EB5. We need it to start with 4 zeros. So again, we just press the mine button here, and the computer will go through loads of numbers here, and it will find a value which combines with the data to give us a valid hash. And that value in this example now is 235790. So this miner has solved the puzzle. He's found the key, he's found the nonce. The hash is now starts with 4 zeros. It's correct, and he says that he broadcasts that to the network, and that block will then get a series of confirmations, and the miner will get his reward, and so on and so forth. And that's basically how a blockchain keeps a record, which is decentralized, it's in time order, and it's unchangeable. So for example, if we try to change some of the data in the previous block, the hash will be invalid, because if I add a full stop, or if I want to say A sends $2 to B, then the hash here will change. And because the hash here will change, that the block 2 will become invalid, because block 2 is looking at the hash in block 1. So what I'd have to do is I'd have to remine this block and remine the next block, and so on and so forth. And I have to basically remine a whole sequence, which could take years depending on the length of the blockchain. And in terms of some FAQs, so how is double spend prevented? So for example, if we try to send 2 simultaneous payments, the first confirmed payment will be added to the ledger, and the second payment that I try to send at the same time will be rejected. So this is why it's recommended to wait for 6 confirmations to ensure your transaction is valid. Because if the one that's confirmed first will get a second confirmation, will get a third confirmation, a fourth confirmation, and the one that is not confirmed will just fall away. It will just be an orphan. So this is why it's recommended to wait for 6 confirmations to ensure that the miners recognize that transaction as valid, and will build further blocks on that valid transaction. The second question that people ask is, can the blockchain be hacked? So in theory, the blockchain can be hacked. If someone controls 51% of the mining power of the whole network, they could prevent new transactions from gaining confirmations, and they could double spend their own coins. But however, it's unlikely because such an attack would destroy the trust in the cryptocurrency and the value would drop to zero. Therefore, there's no incentive then for the attacker to do this, because if he, kind of hacks the network and uses his mining power to stop confirmations and to double spend, he would just destroy the trust in that cryptocurrency. So any gains he makes out of that would be worthless because people wouldn't pay anything. People are only paying these extraordinary amounts of Bitcoin because it's secure, it's unchangeable, and people trust it. So if that would go on, that would undermine the whole cryptocurrency, and the gains from this attacker would be worthless. So there's actually no incentive for him to do that. So that's why it's very unlikely that this would happen. And the other thing is, what can blockchain be used for? So blockchain's most famous application is the currency, so it's Bitcoin. However, you could also use it to create a virtual token of an asset, for example, like a car, to track ownership. So usually you would need paperwork, you would need a registration number to prove you are the registered owner. But these could be forged or could be stolen. A blockchain provides an easier and cheaper solution to track ownership through the distributed ledger network that we went through earlier. The same could be said for houses or passports or even birth certificates or any type of record-keeping mechanism. The possibilities are huge. So I hope that that was helpful. And yeah, thanks for watching.